So we are starting one more session. Today is a very special day because we will start the third canto, Haribo. So we will hear a lot of interesting pastimes, and we will learn a lot about the history of the universe. Not only about the process of creation itself, but about the history of the universe, right? The different events that happened after the creation of Brahma. And gradually we will see that the Srimad Bhagavatam actually it gives a very coherent way, a very coherent description of the history of the universe. So the Bhagavatam is not just a book that has different stories, but it has actually a coherent narrative that describes the history of the universe, starting from the creation of Brahma all the way to where we are now. So it's quite interesting. We will gradually come to this to understand these mysteries. And so today we will start two chapters, or we will study two chapters, of the first and the second chapters of the third canto. And the central topic here is the meeting between Vidura and Uddhava. So at the end of the second canto, Sanaka Rishi, he asked Sukadeva Goswami about the activities of Vidura after leaving the place, after leaving the palace, like after being offended by Duryodhana. We studied these pastimes. And then Sutta Goswami, he answers that Parikshit Maharaja, he asked the same question to Sukadeva Goswami after hearing the explanation of the Chatusloki, the Chatusloki Bhagavatam, right? The 4 verses that was given on chapter 2.10. And thus, he just proceeds in narrating it. So it's interesting that the same question that Saunaka Rishi asked in Naimisharana was the same question that Parikshit Maharaja asked to Sukadeva Goswami after he completed the explanation of the Chatusloki, right? So interesting, like there is a synchronism there between the two. So the third and fourth cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they are centered around this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, right? So all the pastimes narrated there, including the pregnancy of deity, the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, the pastime of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, the instructions of Lord Kapila, Daksha offending Lord Shiva, and then Sati leaving her body, Prithu Maharaja milking the earth, and so on. They are all parts of this discussion, right, between Vidura and Maitreya. However, before meeting Maitreya, Vidura met Uddhava and listened to a summary description of Krishna's pastimes, right? So this conversation between Vidura and Uddhava, it represents the first time that these intimate pastimes of the Lord are discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Like the first canto, it's centered around the activities of the Pandavas, the birth of Parikshit Maharaja, as also explains about different incarnations of the Lord. Then the second canto explains about the Virat Rupa, the process of mystic yoga, right? The process of creation of the universe. It gives us a lot of like philosophical basis for understanding the Lord and accepting the process of constantly remembering Him, right? The beginning of the third canto, however, it brings us the first description of the Lord's intimate pastimes. And so after our understanding is further deepened in the subsequent cantos, we will have the same pastimes described in much more detail in the 10th canto. So here we have like a summary of these pastimes, and then gradually we will understand better about them. And in the 10th canto, we will have this broader discussion of the pastimes of Krishna. And of course, we hope that by there, we will be able to very deeply understand these pastimes. So, okay, so it starts with the story of Vidura. So in verses 1 and 2 of the first chapter, Sukadeva Goswami, he introduces the story of Vidura as an answer to the inquiry of Parikshit Maharaj, right? Because Parikshit Maharaj, he asks, I want to hear more about Vidura and his conversation with Maitreya, right? So Sukadeva Goswami, he starts by giving an introduction about Vidura. Then on verse 3 and 4, Parikshit, he asks specifically about this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. And then on verse 5, then Sutta Goswami, he starts with this explanation. He starts by giving an introduction. So I will quote here from the first verse. First verse is, Sri Sutta Goswami said, the great sage Sukadeva Goswami was highly experienced and was pleased with the king. Thus being questioned by the king, he said to him, please hear the topics attentively, right? So he's preparing to start explaining. Then, from verses 6 to 16, Sukadeva Goswami, he describes the story of Vidura, right? And how he decided to leave the place, because that's something that may sound surprising. How is that such a respected person like Vidura just decides to abandon everything like this from day to night, right? So he tells the story of how this happened. And this pastime of Vidura leaving the palace, it happened after the exile of the Pandavas, but before the battle of Kurukshetra, right? After the Pandavas went to the forest, when they were in the forest, before they came back. So all the events of the fourth canto, including like third and fourth canto, including the conversation with Maitreya, they happen before Vidura goes back to the palace to save Dhritarashtra, right? Something that we studied already in the first canto, but that's something that happens in the future, right? So here we are, like chronologically speaking, before that point. So Vidura and Dhritarashtra, they were brothers of Pandu, right? The previous emperor. Dhritarashtra was the eldest son, but he couldn't become the king because he had been blind since birth. Vidura also couldn't because he was the son of a maidservant. Therefore, Pandu became the king. So when Pandu passed away, the crown passed to Yudhishthira, right, the eldest son of him. However, Dhritarashtra, he became resentful with that because he desired that his son Duryodhana would become the king instead. And this led to this conspiracy with Duryodhana, Dushashana, Sakuni, and others. Right? First, they tried to kill the Pandavas, right, by different means, and later they just cheated them on the gambling, right, on the dice game, and took the kingdom from them, and they sent them in exile. They offended Draupadi, and so on. So, although Yudhishthira, he was defeated unfairly in the game, he honored his words and went into exile with his brothers, right? However, when the time came to get the kingdom back, right, when after the exile passed and they returned, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, they refused. So they remained like very adamant, even after, many attempts to negotiate the situation. Even Krishna personally went to the assembly, to speak with them. So with this, the battle of Kurukshetra became inevitable. And of course, we understand that the battle of Kurukshetra is the will of the Lord, right? That's why it couldn't be prevented. So, although spiritually blind, Dhritarashtra, he had some trust in his brother, Vidura, and thus he asked him for advice, right? What to do. And Vidura, he spoke directly to the point, and this is verses 11 to 13. Vidura said, you must now return the legitimate share to Yudhishthira, who has no enemies and who has been forbearing through untold sufferings due to your offenses. He's waiting with his younger brothers, among whom is the revengeful Bhima, breathing heavily like a snake. Surely you are afraid of him. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, has accepted the sons of Pritha as his kingsmen, and all the kings of the world are with Lord Sri Krishna. He's present in his home with all his family members, the kings and princes of the Yadu dynasty, who have conquered an unlimited number of rulers, and he is their lord. You are maintaining offense personified, Duryodhana, as your infallible son. But he's envious of Lord Krishna. And because you are thus maintaining a non-devotee of Krishna, you are devoid of all auspicious qualities. Relieve yourself of this ill fortune as soon as possible and do good to the whole family. Right? So this is Vidura speaking to Dhritarashtra. So he spoke very seriously and very strongly with Dhritarashtra. But Dhritarashtra, he could not accept this advice, and he just remained silent, right? And then Duryodhana took advantage of the situation and used it to offend his uncle Vidura and chase him away, right? This we can see here in the illustration. See, Dhritarashtra, he's sitting there, he's not really speaking anything, and Duryodhana, he took charge of the situation. He offended Vidura, Vidura just left. So Duryodhana said, this is verse 15, who asked him to come here, this son of a kept mistress? He's so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those whose support those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his breath. Like, take everything from him, leave him with just his life. So Vidura was not attached to life in the palace. On the opposite, he took the situation as an opportunity to go on a pilgrimage to the holy places, right? He understood that this was an arrangement by the Lord, like Haribo. So he said, okay, very nice. I'm free now from this family, right? So he just left. So Vidura, he traveled through many different holy places. He went to Ayodhya, Dwarka, Mathura, many places where deities of the Lord were worshipped in the temples. So during this his pilgrimage, he remained independent, right, without depending on anyone. So he was dressed like a mendicant, without any sign of being part of any special order, and not looking like someone who was part of the royal order. And in this way, incognito, he could travel without being recognized by any of his relatives, right? Haribo. So, okay, then there is Uddhava, the pure devotee of the Lord, right? Haribo. So now we will hear a little bit about Uddhava. So, okay, so by the time that Vidura reached Prabhaksakshetra, the battle of Kurukshetra, it had already happened, right? And Yudhishthira had become the undisputed king of the world, right? And there he got the news, right? He got the news about the death of his relatives in the fight, how the battle happened, and so on. He learned that just the Pandavas and Dhritarashtra had survived, and so on and so forth. Of course, at that time there was no internet, so news it took a little bit more time to travel around. So, but instead of lamenting, Vidura, he continued his pilgrimage. He passed through the provinces of Surat, Salvira, Matsya, Kurujangala, and then he finally reached the banks of the Yamuna, and that's where he met Uddhava, right? Haribo. So now we have this beautiful encounter of these two pure devotees, Vidura and Uddhava. And so this is narrated on verse 25. Then, due to his great love and feeling, Vidura embraced him, Uddhava, who was a constant companion of Lord Krishna and formerly a great student of Brihaspati's. Vidura then asked him for news of the family of Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So at this point, Krishna had just left the planet, right? It was not long ago. Both Uddhava and Maitreya, they were with Krishna under the banyan tree when he was hit by the arrow of Jara. And there, Krishna exhibited a four-armed form and transmitted many spiritual instructions to Uddhava, right? Both Uddhava and Maitreya. And these instructions, they are recorded in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? That's something that we will study much later, right, at the end of the course, after the 10th canto. So there is an interesting purport that describes this 11.635. So it says, quote, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to bewilder the demons and ensure that the words of his own devotees and of the Brahmanas be maintained, created a body of material energy into which the arrow was shot. But the Lord's actual four-armed form was never touched by the arrow of Jara, who is actually the Lord's devotee, Bhrigu Rishi. In a previous age, Bhrigu Muni had placed his foot on the chest of Lord Vishnu. In order to counteract the offense of improperly placing his foot on the Lord's chest, Bhrigu had to take birth as a degraded hunter. But even though a great devotee willingly accepts such a low birth, the personality of Godhead cannot tolerate seeing his devotee in such a fallen condition. Thus, the personality of Godhead arranged at the end of Dwapara Yuga, when the Lord was winding up his manifest pastimes, that his devotee Bhrigu, in the form of the hunter Jara, would cast the arrow into a material body created by the Lord's illusory energy. Thus, the hunter would become remorseful, gain release from his degraded births, and go back to Vaikuntha Loka, right? Jai. So here is mentioned that the Lord assumed material form where Jara was able to shoot this arrow. And this body, of course, was left behind after the Lord left the universe. So because Uddhava was a very confidential devotee, so this is the end of the quote. So now me speaking again. So because Uddhava was a very confidential devotee, Krishna gave him the mission of sharing knowledge, right? Sharing this knowledge that he received with the sages from Badarikashrama and giving them association. So during his pastimes, the Lord had visited many places, but not Badarikashrama, right? This place the Lord was not able to visit. So he wanted to send his most intimate servitor there to instruct, these dear sages on the perfect path. So Uddhava received this mission of going there and sharing this knowledge with the sages. And then, next slide, Vidura meets with Uddhava. Haribol. So when Vidura met with him, Krishna had already left, right? So when Vidura met with Uddhava, Krishna left the planet already. This is a little after. So chronologically, this is after the 11th canto, right? After the discussion that we have in the 11th canto, but before the first canto, right? When Vidura goes back to the palace and saves Dhritarashtra. So, okay, so when both met, Krishna had left already, and Uddhava was on the way to the Himalayas to visit Badarikashrama. And when they met, Vidura embraced him, asked news about the Lord and the Yadu dynasty. He asked about the Pandavas and also asked about many other personalities. So, for example, he asked about Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, about Ugrasena, the king, right? The devoted father of Kansa, who Krishna put in the throne after he killed the demon. Samba, the son of Jambavati, who was an incarnation of Kartikeya, right? The son of Lord Shiva. Yuyudhana, who learned the military science from Arjuna. Also Akrura, the uncle of Krishna, right? Who came to Vrindavan to take him to Mathura. Also about Devaki, the mother of Krishna, and others, right? And Vidura also asked about Pradyumna and Aniruna. And both appear as sons of Krishna in Dwaraka, but they are originally parts of the original quadruple expansion. So therefore, Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So Pradyumna and Aniruddha that appear as the sons of Krishna, as two of the sons of Krishna, they are these, Pradyumna and Aniruddha, that together with Vasudeva and Sankarsana form this original quadruple expansion. And in reality, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So in his original form, Krishna always stays in Vrindavan, but he expands himself into other forms to play his different pastimes, right? In all the other pastimes. So, for example, when he departs to Dwarka, he expands himself into Vasudeva, who in turn expands himself into Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, and they generate all the other expansions. Mahavishnu, for example, comes from Aniruddha, right? So it goes like this. So, Vidura also asked about the Pandavas, Kunti, and others. And he mentioned Dhritarashtra, but he didn't ask about his welfare. He just mentioned him. Why? Because he understood that there was no chance for Dhritarashtra to be well after all the offenses that he committed against the Pandavas. So he didn't ask, oh, is he well? He knew the answer already. He's not well. So on his purport to verse 42, Prabhupada explains the difference between Dhritarashtra and Vidura, although they were brothers, but they were very, very different. So, quote, although he was the brother of Dhritarashtra, Vidura was completely different. By the grace of Lord Krishna, he was not foolish like his brother, and thus his brother's association could not influence him. Dhritarashtra and his materialistic sons wanted to falsely lord it over the world by dint of their own strength. The Lord encouraged them in this, and thus they became more and more bewildered. But Vidura wanted to achieve a sincere devotional service of the Lord, and therefore became a soul absolutely surrendered to the absolute personality of Godhead. He could realize this in the progress of his pilgrim's journey, and thus he was freed from all doubts. He was not at all sorry to be bereft of his heart and home, because he now had experienced that dependence on the mercy of the Lord is a greater freedom than so-called freedom at home, right? So now Vidura was free. He was just traveling and he was free to serve the Lord. He didn't have to associate with Dhritarashtra, with Duryodhana, with all these materialistic people, right? So he was happier in this way. So now we go to the next, we start, okay, so then we go to the next chapter. Okay, here there is one slide that I missed. Vidura reveals that Krishna left. No, actually not. That is, okay, it's going to come here. It's still in it's still in this pastime. So, okay, so now we start the next chapter. That's 3.2. So, okay, so just some small recap here. So at the end of the first chapter, Vidura told Uddhava, right? Quote, "Oh, my friend, please therefore chant the glories of the Lord, who is meant to be glorified in the places of pilgrimage. He is unborn, and yet he appears by his causeless mercy upon the surrendered rulers of all parts of the universe. Only for their interest did he appear in the family of his unalloyed devotees, the Yadus." Unquote. So the word used in this verse is kirtaya, please narrate, right? So the idea is that Uddhava could answer the questions of Vidura by just narrating the pastimes of the Lord, right? There was no need for some, hugely intellectual explanation. No, just narrate the pastimes of the Lord, and this will answer all the questions. So this is indicated by this word, kirtaya. So hearing these questions, Uddhava was not able to answer immediately, right? It took time for him to start speaking, because these questions, they were very overwhelming to him, because the remembrance of the Lord put him in great anxiety. And it happens that at this point, Krishna had just had already disappeared from the planet, right? And the questions of Vidura just further unsettled his heart. Like he was already pained that Krishna left. And when Vidura started asking about these pastimes, he became even more pained, right? Of course, in the spiritual sense, that's ecstasy. But, still there is the emotion there. So Uddhava, he was engaged in the service of the Lord since in the beginning of his life. When he was a 5-year-old child, he was so absorbed in worshiping the Lord that he would forget to eat. Imagine. And as he grew older, his devotion to the Lord just increased. And Prabhupada explains this on his purport to the verse 332. So Prabhupada explains there that uh, actually 322. So from his very birth, Uddhava was a natural devotee of Lord Krishna, or Anitya Siddha, a liberated soul. From natural instinct, he used to serve the Lord Krishna even in his childhood. He used to play with dolls in the form of Krishna. He would serve the dolls by dressing, feeding, and worshipping them, and thus he was constantly absorbed in the play of transcendental realization. These are the signs of an eternally liberated soul. An eternally liberated soul is a devotee of the Lord who never forgets him. Human life is meant for reviving one's eternal relation with the Lord. And all religious injunctions are meant for awakening this dormant instinct of the living entity. The sooner this awakening is brought about, the quicker the mission of human life is fulfilled. In a good family of devotees, the child gets the opportunity to serve the Lord in many ways. A soul who is already advanced in devotional service has the opportunity to take birth in such an enlightened family. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 641. Suchinam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Brasta Brijayate. Even the fallen devotee gets the opportunity to take his birth in the family of a well-situated Brahmana or in a rich, well-to-do mercantile family. In both these families, there is a good opportunity to revive one's sense of God consciousness automatically, because particularly in these families, the worship of Lord Krishna is regularly performed, and the child gets the opportunity to imitate the process of worship called archana. So this is the end of the quote of Prabhupada, unquote. How it was for a great devotee like Uddhava to be left behind after the Lord concluded his pastimes? We can't imagine, right? Unless we are in the same platform, we can't imagine, we can't understand. Uh, but we can we can't imagine. But everything that is connected with the Lord is auspicious, and thus remembrance of the Lord, even in separation, is the greatest source of ecstasy, right? So in fact, meditation in the Lord in separation is even stronger than when he's physically present, right? We can see this in the example of the gopis. So okay, so we can't understand what he was experiencing, but what was his reaction? And this is narrated on 3, 2, 4, and 5. So, quote, for a moment, he remained dead silent, and his body did not move. He became absorbed in the nectar of remembering the Lord's lotus feet in devotional ecstasy, and he appeared to be going increasingly deeper into that ecstasy. It was so observed by Vidura that Uddhava had all the transcendental bodily changes due to total ecstasy, and he was trying to wipe away tears of separation from his eyes. Thus, Vidura could understand that Uddhava had completely assimilated extensive love for the Lord, right? Haribo. So, Prabhupada comments that these kinds of bodily changes exhibited by Uddhavas by Uddhava, they can't be imitated. It's just not possible. They are possible only for a person in the transcendental plane. So a devotee in this on this platform, like Uddhava, he's free to join the pastimes of the Lord in the spiritual world, even while he's still technically living in a material body. So his consciousness travels between the two planes. And because of this, their behavior, they appears to be erratic, like incomprehensible to regular people. Like most people, they can't understand. So in the verse, it reveals that Uddhava had gone to the abode of the Lord in his meditation. So in other words, his consciousness was transferred to the spiritual world, and he had to come back to the human plane to be able to finally answer the questions of Vidura. So see, this is the point that I made the other day, that spiritual world is not geographical location. It's a matter of where our consciousness is focused. Right? Our consciousness can go here and there in 1 second at the speed of the mind. And Prabhupada explains this also in the purport of verse 6. So, quote, when Uddhava was fully absorbed in the transcendental ecstasy of love of God, he actually forgot all about the external world. The pure devotee lives constantly in the abode of the Supreme Lord, even in the present body, which apparently belongs to this world. The pure devotee is not exactly on the broadly plane, since he is absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme. When Uddhava wanted to speak to Vidura, he came down from the abode of the Lord, Dwarka, to the material plane of human beings, right? So Prabhupada makes the same point. Okay, now the next slide. I was already trying to put it before time. So Vidura reveals that Krishna left. So now, with so much effort, Vidura is able to finally start answering the questions that Vidura made before. So when Uddhava was finally able to speak, he started by revealing that Krishna had left the planet, right? So just like the sun is sometimes visible and sometimes not visible, the Lord is always present, right? But he becomes visible only for a short period, once in a day of Brahma, right? So he comes, he plays his pastimes, and then when he's ready, he goes to the next universe, right? So in reality, the pastimes of the Lord, they are constantly going on, right? It's just like it's just that they become visible in a particular universe, and then in the next, just like the sun is always shining and visible in some part of the planet, right? So Prabhupada explains this in the following way, right? So he explains this in his purport to the verse 3 to 12. So he says, quote, when the Lord's pastimes are visible to the human eye, they are called prakata. And when they are not visible, they are called aprakata. In fact, the Lord's pastimes never stop, just as the sun never leaves the sky. Right? The sun is always there somewhere. It's just that sometimes we can't see it because, he goes to the other side of the planet. But still, the sun is like in the sky, right? It's just that we are looking to the opposite side. So the sun is always in its right orbit in the sky, but it is sometimes visible and sometimes invisible to our limited vision. Similarly, the pastimes of the Lord are always current in one universe or another. And when Lord Krishna disappeared from the transcendental abode of Dwarka, it was simply a disappearance from the eyes of the people there. It should not be misunderstood that his transcendental body, which is just suitable for the pastimes in the mortal world, is in any way inferior to his different expansions in the Vaikuntha Lokas. And that's Srimad Bhagavatam 3.2.12, like I said. So Uddhava, he started by saying that he lamented that not all the members of the Yadu dynasty were able to fully recognize Krishna as the Supreme Lord, and that he himself was not able to properly use the opportunity he had to serve the Lord. And of course, this is all due to the ecstasy of separation. Prabhupada explains this point. He says, quote, "The pure devotee of the Lord thinks himself most unfortunate. That is due to excessive love of the Lord and is one of the transcendental perceptions of viraha, the suffering of separation," right? Unquote. So some of the Yadavas, they were eternally perfect associates of the Lord, like Nityasiddhas, who came with him from the spiritual world, like Uddhava, for example. While others, they were demigods who joined his pastimes from here, from this universe. So those who joined from here are the Yadavas who left Dwarka to perform the sacrifice, and then they killed each other in the fight with the bamboo rods, right? These were all demigods who joined from this universe. And this, of course, allowed Krishna to finish his dynasty when he was ready to leave. It was not possible that Krishna would just leave and leave all these demigods here, causing disturbances in the planet, right? So thus, we can see that these demigods who joined the pastimes of the Lord, they were not necessarily like perfect devotees, right? They were, of course, great souls, and they had the opportunity to join the Lord's pastimes to increase their devotional service. But when the Lord finished his pastimes, they were returned to their posts as the departmental heads of the universe, right? And that's why Prabhupada, in his purport to 3 to 10, he defines them as only partially cognizant of the Lord. And he also said that their lack of knowledge was not due to their insufficient erudition. It was due to their misfortune, right? So Prabhupada was speaking about these different points when he made these affirmations, right? So after having experienced the pastimes of the Lord, then these demigods, they went back to their posts, right, in the celestial planets, and they will stay in their posts for millions of years more, until the end of their mandates, until the end of their lives. And during this time, they have the opportunity to chant and remember the glories of the Lord. And then after this period, the ones who really attain a platform of pure devotional service, then they finally can go back to Godhead, right? So it's not such a fortunate position to be a demigod, right? Because you see, even when you join the Lord's pastimes, you stay for some time, but then you need to go back and be again a demigod for, 300 million years or something. And only after this period, you are free to finally go back to Godhead. So it's not easy to be a demigod, right? It's not a position to envy. So, but actually, their situation is similar to ours, because we also have the opportunity to participate in the pastimes of the Lord, right? Being part of the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But how much we will benefit from this opportunity depends on us, right? Because the soul has always free will, right? And this free will can be used to look at Krishna or to turn our face away from him, right? So just like many, they were not able to recognize Krishna even when he was, personally present before then, like in this planet, like Sisupala, for example. Others, they may not be able to take advantage of any other opportunity, right? So the mercy is available to everyone, just like the light of the sun. But it also depends on our attitude, to accept it or not, right? So also depends on us. And then we continue. Vidura describes Krishna's pastimes, right? So we will start this beautiful narration, beautiful summary of Krishna's pastimes that Uddhava gives to Vidura. We will see half today and half next time, right? The other half. So today we will see second chapter. Next time we will see chapters 3 and 4. So After deliberating on these points, Uddhava, he starts a summary description of the Lord's pastimes, right? And this will continue all the way to chapter 4. And all these pastimes, they will be described in more detail in the 10th canto, right? So we can see that the Srimad Bhagavatam, he starts by describing the pastimes of great devotees of the Lord, like the Pandavas, Vyasadeva, Narada Muni, Sukadeva Goswami, Bhishma Deva, and Parikshit Maharaj, right, and others in the first canto, right? Then it progresses, giving us an understanding of the Lord in his universal aspect in the second canto, like explaining how he controls his different energies that are responsible for the cosmic manifestation, how he's present everywhere, and so on. And now, at the beginning of the third canto, we have this preliminary description of the personal pastimes of the Lord. So, first of all, how is it possible that the transcendental Lord may appear in this mortal world and become visible to us, right? Interesting question. Does he, by chance, assume a material body like us, like the Mayavadis believe? And Uddhava's answer is no, right? Very firm, no. The Lord appears in his internal potency, right? Yogamaya, right? He doesn't come in a material body. He comes in his original spiritual form, and he never leaves. He never gets out of his spiritual potency. So he never comes in contact with the illusory energy. It may appear to be so to someone with imperfect vision, but that's not factual. So the Lord comes in his original spiritual form, and he performed his pastimes in the association with his pure devotees, right? Beautiful. So this point is emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 4, when Krishna mentions that he spoke the science of the Bhagavad Gita to Vivasvan many millions of years ago. So when he says that, Arjuna questions, how is it possible that Krishna, like being his contemporary, like how he could be present like millions of years before speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Vivasvan? And then Krishna reveals that both he and Arjuna, they appear continuously in many forms, in these and other, many forms, right? In these and other universes. So Krishna, remembers everything because he always comes in his original spiritual form. But Arjuna, he forgets because he accepts a different body each time, right? So the fact that Krishna remembers everything that he did in his previous incarnations, it also proves that he doesn't accept a material body like ordinary souls, right? So a king may visit a prison to see how the inmates are doing, right? He may go there and visit the prisoners. But it doesn't mean that he becomes a prisoner by doing so, right? He's free to go and live wherever he wants. So similarly, Krishna remains transcendental, even though he comes to play his pastimes in different material universes. So the first pastime described by Uddhava is the Rajasuya sacrifice of Maharaja Yudhishthira. So during the sacrifice, all the demigods who rule the celestial planets, as well as as kings, from the intermediate planetary system, and even from the lower planets, they came, and they could appreciate the transcendental beauty of the Lord, right? But being conditioned, these kings and demigods, they thought that Krishna was a creation of Lord Brahma. That no, they were thinking that Krishna was like them, right? But of course, in reality, Krishna is the controller or is the creator of both, Lord Brahma and everyone. So the Rajasuya sacrifice, it happened before the dice game and before the exile of the Pandavas, right? Because there was this pastime of the house made of lac, this flammable house that Duryodhana gave to the Pandavas, right? So the Pandavas were living there in this flammable house, and when Duryodhana tried to kill the Pandavas, right, by putting it on fire, the 5 brothers, right, together with their mother Kunti, they escaped through the forest. And they went all the way to the village of Ekachakra, that is on the opposite side of India, on the east of India. And they lived there for several years dressed as Brahmanas. So Hastinapura, the capital of the Kurus, is where it's now New Delhi, right? According to Prabhupada. While Ekachakra is close to Mayapur. So it's quite far. It's on the other side of the country. So they stayed there for some time, and then on the way back, Arjuna, he attended the Swayamvara ceremony of Draupadi, and he won her hand in marriage, right? And then when they finally returned to Hastinapura and claimed their kingdom, Dhritarashtra again cheated them by giving a deserted part of the kingdom as their share. But still, being so pious, the Pandavas, they were able to quickly develop it. And so many people went to live there. And eventually, Yudhishthira, he could claim dominance over all the other kings and celebrates this Rajasuya sacrifice with the participation of Krishna, right? So these are like earlier pastimes before the dice game and so on. And this led Duryodhana to become more and more envious, right? And then finally, there was this plot with the dice game where he cheated the Pandavas and sent them into exile for 13 years. And then after this period, the Pandavas returned and being refused their kingdom back, they started preparing for the battle of Kurukshetra, right? So this is described, verse 3 to 13. All the demigods from the upper, lower, and middle universal planetary systems assembled at the altar of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaja Yudhishthira. After seeing the beautiful bodily features of Lord Krishna, they all contemplated that he was the ultimate dexterous creation of Brahma, the creator of human beings, right? So they could appreciate the transcendental beauty of Krishna, but because they were, not highly situated in knowledge, they were thinking that Krishna was a creation of Lord Brahma. So the next pastime mentioned by Uddhava is how the gopis, they became affected when Krishna left Mathura. So in reality, again, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So the gopis became afflicted when Krishna left to Mathura, right? And of course, again, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, right? He resides there eternally in his original form, right? As Krishna. But Vasudeva Krishna, his first expansion goes to Mathura, right? So he kind of expands. One Krishna goes back to Vrindavan, the other goes to Mathura. So, however, in Vrindavan, Krishna is sometimes visible and sometimes not visible. And this creates this dynamic of meeting and separation that increases the love of the inhabitants for him. And that leads to the most intense exchanges of love later, right? When they meet at Kurukshetra. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, he makes this point that the intensity of the loving exchanges between the inhabitants of Vrindavan and the Lord when they meet Krishna at Kurukshetra is even more intense than in Vrindavan. So it's an interesting point. Okay, so quote here, verse 14. Quote, the dancers of Vraja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. Right? Haribo, unquote. And then there is more here. So next, Uddhava, he mentions how Krishna was born in the prison house of Kansa. Because during the marriage of Devaki, the sister of Kansa with Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, a voice from the sky predicted that the eighth son of Devaki would kill Kansa, right? So Kansa became very enraged with that, right? So he took his sword and he prepared to kill his own sister. But he was somehow or other pacified by Vasudeva, who promised to give him all the children born of them, right? Vasudeva, he was famous for never breaking his word. So Kansa, he felt reassured, right, by this promise, and he just let them be. But later, due to the advice of his, demoniac ministers, he decided to put them in prison and proceeded to kill all the sons of Devaki one by one. And with this, Kansa, he exhausted, his pious credits and prepared the road for his death, right? And Uddhava mentions, like that's verse 15, quote, the personality of Godhead, the all-compassionate controller of both the spiritual and material creations, is unborn. But when there is friction between his peaceful devotees and persons who are in the material modes of nature, he takes birth just like fire, accompanied by the Mahatattva. Right? So by his acts, Kansa, he accelerated the process that led to the birth of Krishna and ultimately his demise, right? So just like, atheists who sometimes, harass devotees are in reality just digging their own graves, right? Most, however, they will not have the same fortune as Kansa to be killed by Krishna, right? They ordinary atheists, they just go to hell and they just stay there for a long time. So the six sons of Devaki who were killed by Kansa, they were previously the sons of Marichi, and they had been cursed by a Brahmana. That's why they had to take this birth. And after being killed by Kansa, they returned to their position on the celestial planets. The seventh son was Balaram, who was transferred to the womb of Rohini, right, making it appear that Devaki had a miscarriage. And the eighth son was Krishna. So after being born in the prison, Krishna was taken by Vasudeva to the house of Nanda Maharaj, and there he was living incognito, right? So in other words, the unborn and all-powerful Lord appears to take birds and run in fear of an enemy, right? That's quite amazing, right? And Uddhava reveals now how these pastimes, they are bewildering, right? So verse 16. When I think of Lord Krishna, how he was born in the prison house of Vasudeva, although he is unborn, how he went away with his father's protection, how he went away from his father's protection to Vraja and lived there incognito out of fear of the enemy, and how, although unlimitedly powerful, he fled from Mathura in fear. All these bewildering incidents give me distress, right? Unquote. So later, when Krishna became a grown-up, he went with Akrura to Mathura, right? And there he killed Kansa and he freed his parents, right? So then, playing the role of an obedient son, he begged Vasudeva and Devaki for pardon for not being able to rescue them sooner, right? Such a sweet son, right? So this is narrated on verse 17 and 18. Quote, Lord Krishna begged pardon from his parents for their, Krishna and Balaram's, inability to serve their feet due to being away from home because of great fear of Kansa. He said, "Oh mother, oh father, please excuse us for this inability. All this behavior of the Lord gives me pain at heart." This is Uddhava speaking. Who, after smelling the dust of his lotus feet even once, could ever forget it? Simply by expanding the leaves of the leaves of his eyebrows, Krishna has given the death blow to those who were burdening the earth, right? Haribo, unquote. Okay, so apart from Kansa, Krishna killed millions of other demons, some directly and some through the actions of his devotees, like the Pandavas. So during the battle of Kurukshetra, for example. So in this way, Krishna relieved the burning of the world, like he eliminated all these demons. So, interesting point here. So in the Lagu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami, he reveals that although most incarnations of the Lord, they kill demons, Actually, only when Krishna comes personally do the demons killed by him attain liberation. Right? Rupa Goswami makes this point. Quite interesting. And we can see this in practice. For example, Hiranyakashipu, he was killed by Nrsimhadeva, but he didn't go immediately back to Godhead. He was born as Ravana, and then he was killed by Lord Rama, right? And then he was born again as Sisupala, and then finally he was killed by Krishna, right? So only when he was killed by Krishna, he went back to Godhead. So, and is this with the other demons also? The demons, they are killed by one incarnation, sometimes more than once. And then when finally they are killed by Krishna personally, then finally they go back to Godhead. So in this way, the population of demons in the universe, it grows during the first half of the day of Brahma, right? And this, of course, creates a very difficult situation for everyone, right? Because although they are killed by the demigods and different incarnations of the Lord, their population continues to increase. Right? The demons, there are more and more demons. Because the demons who are killed, they are just reborn in new bodies, right? So they come back. So their population keeps increasing. So when Krishna descends during the reign of the seventh Manu, all these demons, they take birth on Earth. There is this superior arrangement. They all take birth on Earth at the same time. And then the planet becomes overburnt, right? And then when Krishna finally kills them, they are purified of their demoniac nature. And then they finally attain liberation, right? So most of the demons killed by Krishna, they go to the Brahmajyoti, of course. But a few demons who somehow or other develop, a devotional attitude, they are able to attain the spiritual planets. One example is Putana, right? She became an assistant of Mother Yashoda in Goloka. So the universe is thus cleansed, right? When Krishna kills all these powerful demons. And then the devotees, they have, again, peace to practice their devotional service, right? And of course, there are many demons in our age, but not very big, powerful demons like the ones that were present in Krishna's times. That was a really an exceptional time. And then, okay, 19 and 20. Quote, you have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Sisupala, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practice. Who can tolerate separation from him? Certainly, others who were fighters on the battle of Kurukshetra were purified by the onslaught of Arjuna's arrows, and while seeing the lotus-like face of Krishna, so pleasing to the eyes, they achieved the abode of the Lord. Right? Unquote. So, when Krishna killed Kansa, he could very well have assumed the throne, right? But instead, he reinstalled Ugrasena on the throne. And Ugrasena thus, he became the king of the Yadu, Bhoja, and Andaka dynasties, right? All of them. And Krishna played the role of a subordinate to him. So, and this, of course, is possible because of the great piety of Ugrasena, right? Because different from his, demoniac son, he was a great devotee. So Uddhava remembers also how Krishna, although being worshipped by all demigods, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? He used to submit reports to the king, right? That's another thing that makes him bewildered. And another quote, that these are verses 21 and 22. Quote, Uddhava speaking. Lord Sri Krishna is the Lord of all kinds of trees and is independently supreme by achievement of all kinds of fortune. He is worshipped by the eternal maintainers of the creation, who offer him the paraphernalia of worship by touching their millions of helmets to his feet. Therefore, O Vidura, does it not pain us, his servitors, when we remember that he, Lord Krishna, used to stand before King Ugrasena, who was sitting on the royal throne, and used to submit explanations before him, saying, "Oh, my Lord, let it be known to you," right? So Uddhava makes this point. So the mention of Krishna, that Krishna is the Lord of all kinds of trees, is in the sense that he's the master of the three worlds, the three modes of material nature, the three Purusha avatars, right? Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. Also, he's the master of the Trinity of Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. He's also the master of the spiritual, material, and marginal energies, and so on. That's why he's the king of trees, right? Because there are so many trinities that Krishna is the master. And last one for today, the childhood pastimes of the Lord. These are also narrated by Vidura. So after describing these pastimes, right, the attention of Vidura returns to Vrindavan, and he starts a description of the childhood pastimes of the Lord. So although Putana, she came to the Lord as an enemy, right, intending to kill him, she simultaneously manifested an attitude of service by feeding the Lord with her breast milk. So the Lord does accepted her service, right? And at the same time, he destroyed her, demoniac nature by killing her body. So in this way, Putana, right? Putana, the soul, not Putana, the witch. So this way, Putana, the soul, became free, right? And she was able to join the Lord's eternal pastimes in Goloka Vrindavan, like as one of the lady assistants of Mother Yashoda. So there she helps Mother Yashoda to take care of Krishna. So verse 23, quote, "Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than the Lord, who granted the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful, and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast," right? So Krishna, he's always the all-powerful Supreme Lord, right? Doesn't matter if he appears as a small baby or like, in a gigantic form, for example, like Lord Varahadeva to lift up the earth, right? Doesn't matter the size of his body. He's always the Supreme Lord. So in any case, his power is never diminished, right? Therefore, even as a small baby, he had no problem killing a powerful demon like Putana, right? For Krishna, that's nothing, right? So cases like that of Putana are, however, an exception. It's not the rule. So most demons Krishna kills are just elevated to the Brahmajyoti, right? While devotees, they reach the spiritual planets where they can, personally serve the Lord. So there is thus no comparison between the position of the devotees and the demons, right? The demons, they are just liberated just by the causeless mercy of the Lord. They don't deserve it, right? The demons and the impersonalists, they go to the same place, right? They go to the Brahmajyoti. However, in his ecstasy of separation, Uddhava laments that he is not able to see the Lord face to face, like the demons do when they are fighting the Lord, right? And in his great humility, he overestimates the position of the demons, right? He says like this, verse 24, quote, "I consider the demons who are inimical toward the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting with the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they are able to see the Lord carried on the shoulder of Garuda, the son of Tarksha, Kashyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon on his hands," right? So this is ecstasy, just as his humility, right? It's not that, the demons are factually better than the devotees, right? Prabhupada makes this point very clear in his purport. So most of the demons that Krishna came to kill, they took birth before him, right? And they were overburning the planet. And in this situation, Bhumi, right, the personification of art, she went to Lord Brahma to beg for help, right? Help me. And as a response, Brahma prayed to the Lord to come as an incarnation, to relieve the burden of the world, right? And there is a quote here. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, being prayed to by Brahma to bring welfare to the earth, was begotten by Vasudeva in the womb of his wife Devaki in the prison of the king of Bhoja. And this is verse 25, right? So this verse makes this point. So Krishna goes to Mathura to kill Kansa at the age of 16, right? However, in this particular iteration of the pastimes, like in this particular run of the pastimes, the Lord decided to go earlier because he was anxious to free his parents. So therefore, the pastimes in Vrindavan, they were accelerated. And the Lord, he just, matured, he just growed up faster than usual. So the 16 years that the Lord usually stays in Vrindavan, they passed in just 11 years, right? So time went faster. So Uddhava describes the Lord during this period as a covered flame, right? Because his true identity was not known at the time. So he was simple, right? He was just the son of Nanda Maharaja and the brother of Balaram, right? So in this mood, so this is Krishna's mood in Vrindavan, right? Different from the opulence, this mood of pomp and opulence in Mathura and in Dwarka. And this is what makes these pastimes in Vrindavan, especially sweet. And now another verse, 26, quote, thereafter, his father, being afraid of Kansa, brought him to the pastures of Maharaja Nanda, and there he lived for 11 years, like a covered flame with his elder brother Baladev. So, in the next 4 verses, Uddhava, he gives a short description of the childhood pastimes of the Lord in company with the cowherd boys. So every day, Krishna would go with them to the pastures, and they would play many different pastimes, and then some demon would appear, Krishna would fight and kill him, right? And then at the end of the day, Krishna would return to Vrindavan and play pastimes with the gopis, right? So the verses here, 27 to 30. Quote, in his childhood, the Almighty Lord was surrounded by cowherd boys and calves, and thus he traveled on the shore of the Yamuna River through gardens densely covered with trees and filled with vibrations of chirping birds. When the Lord displayed his activities, just suitable for childhood, he was visible only to the residents of Vrindavan. Sometimes he would cry and sometimes laugh, just like a child. And while doing so, he would appear like a lion cub. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who is the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow this flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. The great wizards who were able to assume any form were engaged by the king of Bhoja, Kansa, to kill Krishna. But in the course of his pastimes, the Lord killed them as easily as a child breaks dolls. Jai, right? So that is another pastime, is the pastime of Krishna chastising Kaliya. So the pastime is that Kaliya was afraid of Garuda, right? So he took shelter in the waters of Yamuna, and he ended up poisoning the river. So when the cows and the boys, they were poisoned by drinking the water, Krishna played his pastime of dancing on top of the hoods of the serpent while Kaliya was trying to bite him. So by doing so, he chastised him for his mischief, right? And very strongly kicked his hoods, right? Danced on top of his heads. And by the touch of the Lord's lotus feet, Kaliya was purified of his envious mentality. So after receiving the prayers of the wives of Kaliya, right, who were all great devotees, the Lord sent him to live in another place, now assuring him that from that point, he will not need to fear Garuda, right? Garuda was not going to attack him. And then he restored the waters of the Yamuna, and he revived everyone who had been poisoned. And according to Srila Prabhupada, Kalia went to Fiji Islands in the Pacific Ocean after this. And when Prabhupada visited Fiji, he opened a temple there. And this temple, the deity there is Krishna Kalia, right? Krishna dancing on the hoods of the serpent. That's a unique deity. I don't know any other place that has Krishna Kalia, only this temple. So quote, the inhabitants of Vrindavan were perplexed by great difficulties because a certain portion of the Yamuna was poisoned by the chief of the reptiles, Kalia. The Lord chastised the snake king within the water and drove him away. And after coming out of the river, he caused the cows to drink the water and proved that the water was again in its natural state. Jai. And then the last slide. And then finally, there is a short description of the pastime of Govardhan, right? And this happened just after Krishna met the wives of the ritualistic Brahmanas, right? So in this pastime, Krishna showed the supremacy of devotional service, like compared to worship of demigods and other fruitive activities that are recommended in Karma Kanda sections of the Vedas for ordinary people. However, when he returned to Vrindavan, he found the cowherd man preparing to execute a sacrifice to who? Indra, right? So he was trying to stop this worship of demigods, and what he sees people doing Vrindavan, worshiping a demigod, right? So then Krishna came to them, he argued that Indra is just a servant of the Supreme Lord, there is no need to worship him separately, and he argued that instead they should worship Govardhan, because Govardhan is the real source of opulence for Vrindavan, right? Govardhan is just another form of Krishna. So in this way, he instructed the inhabitants of Vrindavan to worship him instead of Indra, right? Okay, so this is a quote, 32-33, quote, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, desired to utilize the opulent financial strength of Maharaja Nanda for worship of the cows, and also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. Thus, he advised his father to perform worship of Go, or the pasturing lands, and the cows, with the help of learned Brahmanas. So, O sober Vidura, King Indra, his honor having been insulted, poured water incessantly on Vrindavan. And thus the inhabitants of Vraja, the land of cows, were greatly distressed. But the compassionate Lord Krishna saved them from danger with his pastime umbrella, the Govardhan Hill, right? Jai, unquote. So in the last verse of the chapter, second chapter, Uddhava he hints at the loving pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, right? But he does this very discreetly. So, and this is sometimes that we can observe throughout the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The intimate pastimes of Krishna and the gopis, they are described very respectfully, right? Sukadeva Goswami, for example, he doesn't even directly mention the name of Radharani. It's not mentioned even a single time in the whole Bhagavatam. He always speaks indirectly about her. So in general, Sahajiyas they like, to openly discuss this intimate pastimes of the Lord, like if there were something cheap, that you can speak on the market. But our acharyas, they gave us this mood of approaching these intimate pastimes of the Lord extremely respectfully, right? And this is the last verse that Sukadeva Uddhava mentions. 24, he says that, quote, in the third season of the year, the Lord enjoyed as the central beauty of the assembly of women by attracting them with his pleasant songs in an autumn night brightened by the moonshine. Right? That's how he describes Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. So the point is that differently from pastimes of Krishna killing demons, maintaining the universe and so on, which naturally like inspired a mood of respect and reverence, like to the Lord, right? When we hear about the universal form, for example, oh, the Lord is so powerful, right? So naturally there is this mood of respect, right? That's natural. But when we hear about the intimate pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, we can easily confuse these pastimes with material lust, right? We may not be able to distinguish between ordinary dealings of boys and girls. Therefore, hearing these pastimes from unqualified sources, it can nourish our material lust and envy of Krishna, right? Which are the reasons for our staying here in the material world, first of all, instead of freeing us from it. It can have the opposite effect. So hearing these pastimes from Sahajiyas and other, sensual, shameless people, they can harm our spiritual life instead of helping it. So in general, only pure devotees who are free from lust, they can properly narrate these pastimes, like speaking in a way that invokes the proper mood in the audience, right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes the material world as an inverted tree, right? This example of the tree being reflected in the lake or in the river. So although the material tree appears to be similar to the original tree, it is inverted, right? So Santaras, that is the mood of neutrality where one has no impulse to directly serve the Lord, it appears in the material world as this mood of renunciation and indifference that is present in the mode of goodness, right? And of course, this is the purest that we can have in this material world. And conversely, the extra-conjugal relationships between Krishna and the gopis, which are the purest and most intense expression of spiritual love and devotion to the Lord, they become material lust when reflected, right? So they appear in this world in the form of these promiscuous relationships between men and women. So spiritual love and material lust, they are diametrically opposite. Nothing can be further than these two things. And they are also contradictory to each other, right? If you have material lust, there is no question of spiritual love and vice versa. And to confuse these two things is actually the greatest tragedy for one's spiritual development, right?